Thank you all for coming. We've got, I think, a pretty great panel set up for us. To my left, we have Graham MacRobie. Graham was the founder of Citizen Hawk, and he since then has gone on to found Alias Encore. Alias Encore retrieves typo-squatted domain names by becoming an affiliate and getting them back. Next to Graham is Jamie Birch. Jamie runs JEBCommerce and MyAffiliateCoach.net. He does affiliate program management and works with brands such as Zappos and Philosophies. And all the way down at the end is Josh Sloan. Josh formerly ran the affiliate program at 1&1. He currently does freelance consulting and affiliate program audits and training. And myself, I'm David Naffziger. I run BrandVerity. We monitor pay-per-click policies. So the way that we're going to try and run this session is we'll start off with a quick overview of the types of abuse that we see most often, and that it's sort of a familiarization process so that as we continue with our discussion, hopefully we're all on the same page. Graham's going to walk through a few slides on different ways of combating that abuse, and then we're going to have a long-running, open-ended conversation about the things that we've seen work, things that we've seen that haven't worked, and engage you guys in questions and answers. Before we begin, there are these wonderful feedback forms. Please grab a hold of one, and as we say things that you like or don't like, jot them down so that we get feedback and can hopefully do a better job this next time around. Before we begin, I would love to get a sense for how many folks in the audience are affiliates, and how many folks are merchants. Oh, mostly merchants. Are there any networks, folks in networks? And I'm guessing anyone that didn't raise their hand is probably someone that we catch. So we'll try and direct things your way.
So if all those other people could raise your hand again, so we can.
Yeah, we should have said if you didn't raise your hand yet, please raise your hand. So the general topic is keeping your affiliate program clean, and I think most of us would agree, and I'm sure many of you would as well, that to some extent abuse is inevitable. The vast majority of affiliates they add fantastic value. There tends to be a very small but also very aggressive set of affiliates that are dedicated abusers. We'll touch on each of these 5 types of abuse, but it ranges from pay-per-click policy violations to the use of malware and toolbars, cookie stuffing, transaction lead fraud, and domain squatting. We'll just touch on several aspects of each of those very briefly. Pay-per-click policy violations. This is my company's bread and butter. We've seen an increasing sophistication by the folks who are trying to abuse the pay-per-click policies. And so a policy might be as simple as you're not allowed to buy these brand terms, or as complex as you can't buy these specific terms, or you're not allowed to direct link, or some combination thereof. Initially, I think affiliates were just using naked affiliate links and direct linking to merchants on brand terms. We've now found them geo-targeting specific regions. They'll run their ads at night. They will launder the referrers so that when you look at your traffic, you won't know that the traffic originally originated from Google or Yahoo. They'll use entry pop-ups and exit pop-ups, and we've even seen them engage in schemes that try and disguise what it is that they're actually doing. So you might see a referrer in your traffic, and you can go and visit the page, and it looks like a normal page that does what it's supposed to do, which is send traffic to you. In reality, it's one of multiple pieces in a step that automatically redirect traffic to your site. Malware toolbars, I think everyone is probably reasonably aware of some of the challenges here. Generally speaking, affiliates will buy ads on existing malware networks. They'll be triggered by searches for your brand term or for products that you sell. When someone visits your website, or often even times when they visit your competitor's website. They'll often show a page directly that represents and drops the cookie, or in some other cases, they will actually block out affiliate links. And so legitimate affiliate links that are actually adding value in your program will get replaced with an ID from someone who's not adding value to your program. Cookie stuffing. I love squirrels. I think they're super cute. You'll find, and he's eating a cookie, so you can see the tie. We had to discuss that before.
I wasn't sure what that was for, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know he loved squirrels.
Yeah, anyway. Effectively, cookie stuffers will find techniques and methods to drop an affiliate cookie on a consumer's computer without the consumer having taken some action, such as clicking a link or adding a coupon to the control seeing their coupon. We've seen a lot of this. Ben Edelman has got some fantastic research out there where he finds this. We've seen a lot of it, usually off of organic search results or in forums. It's very close to the point of sale. Given the life of a cookie, they want to generally target where you're likely to be. Some of the more sophisticated users will use one-by-one frames. They'll use images. They'll post an image on a forum. It looks like a broken image when you see it on the forum. In reality, it's an image hosted off-site, and instead of delivering an image, it delivers a cookie. And no one's a smarter. JavaScript is used heavily for a lot of this. Transaction lead fraud. So we've been talking so far largely about ways that affiliates use to illegitimately get at transactions, or basically get in the way of a transaction. There are a whole host of, not all these techniques are necessarily bad. It really depends on what your specific policy is, but co-registration, we've seen scenarios where someone thinks that they're signing up for a free coupon, and in reality they filled out an insurance lead form. Incentivized registrations are used, I think they're declining a bit, but they were used very heavily in the early days of Facebook game monetization. As you were playing the game, and let's say that you wanted to get more guns so you could go get the mafia boss, you could get those for free by submitting a request for a credit card. The likelihood of that person actually using the credit card in the way that was intended is much lower, and so a lot of programs don't allow that. Lead padding, so some great folks are great at, like they'll just take stuff out of the Yellow Pages and fill out lead forms with invalid data. Stolen credit cards, I think this is the more classic lead fraud, but we've seen affiliate programs used almost to launder money. They will steal credit cards, make a purchase, never expecting to actually get the goods from the purchase, but instead they'll get the transaction, the money from the transaction, their affiliate income, quicker than the credit card fraud report would be generated. And so they play on this, basically the speed of the discovery of fraud and the notification of fraud on the actual credit card versus the payment cycle and when they receive their payment. And it's very common in digital goods. And I think one of the great things about having Josh on the panel is I'm sure at 1&1 they've seen a lot of this over the years and have had to get very sophisticated about it. And brand squatting. I think this is one of the largest problems that people don't know about. Generally speaking, it happens, it's most valuable within the domain name space. That's where the biggest numbers are. We see it on Twitter and Facebook, and people masquerading as your brand. But in the case of the mistyped domains, there's oftentimes very real traffic and very real dollars flowing to fraudsters. So we're now going to move on to Graham's program, and then we'll begin part of our discussion.
Cool, thanks, David. And I also just have a brief presentation. I want to point out in advance that it's squirrel-free, so I apologize if you were looking forward to that. I want to make the point right away that the vast majority of affiliates are honest, hardworking people that are valuable parts of your program, and you shouldn't lose sight of that. But that being said, there are some that are looking to take advantage of the situation. And so I want to start by defining, I think it kind of makes sense to if you're going to combat a problem, you kind of have to understand who you're fighting. And so asymmetric warfare is a term sometimes used by the military to describe combatants of grossly different capabilities and size. So an example would be the United States versus perhaps terrorists. I'm not necessarily comparing bad affiliates to terrorists, but you get the idea that a large entity sometimes is hindered by their size. They can move slowly, and at the same time, some of these smaller entities can be equally weak in different areas, such as their tendencies towards greed, the fact that the internet tends to make people visible whether they like it or not, and there's some degree of accountability as well. So this is just super common sense stuff. I think this is probably for many of you day to day, but I think it makes a lot of sense to just point out you ought to be reaching out to brand new affiliates. You should be keeping in touch with your affiliates, and you know, there's I think some varying degrees of opinion on whether you ought to be making regular phone calls. I personally am a fan of keeping in touch by phone. Just in general, knowing who it is that you're working with. One of the things I find super valuable is knowing who owns the domain name that proposes to be part of, if somebody's applying to your affiliate program and they're going to use a domain name of some sort, figure out who owns that domain name. And there are a variety of Whois tools online. I like better Whois. There's lots and lots. Domain Tools has one as well. And along those lines, here's a list of countries, and by the way, I'm using a slightly updated presentation, so if afterwards you want to come up and bring a card, we can get you updated versions of David's presentation, mine, and, but anyway, here's a list of countries that are highly suspect, and it's not that there aren't some nice people living here, but in general, many of these countries are used for shell corporations, and so when fraudulent affiliates are looking to find ways to avoid accountability and to stay out of hot water legally, especially in the US, oftentimes they can register a corporation in one of these other countries, and those countries will happily do it for you. So for instance, the British Indian Ocean Territory, if my understanding is correct, there's about 3,000 people that live there, most of them are military. If you get an application from IO, the odds are overwhelmingly likely that it's not a legitimate affiliate, but rather somebody who set up a shell corporation and using that to redirect money around so that they would be more immune from US-based lawsuits. So again, this is also common sense stuff, but I think it makes a lot of sense to get a real good understanding when you accept an affiliate into your program of how are they intending to send you traffic. Is it through domain names? Are they going to run an email campaign of some kind? See if you can get some references. Who else are they working with? And then this is really key, and I think we're going to talk about this later, but when affiliates perform super well, right out of the bat, I think that there are, it might be, I think Josh pointed out earlier, somebody you either really want to know or somebody you really don't want to know. And I like that analogy, actually. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And then lastly, there are resources available at many of the networks, particularly some of the larger ones that they have tools to help you spot patterns that are inconsistent. As David mentioned, his bread and butter being keyword related. Ours is centered around typo squatting. So I'm super passionate about this subject. I actually founded a company in around 2000. Somebody essentially did this to us, and I'm sure you've all had it too. When you're typing in a domain name of some kind, you type the wrong character, and the next thing you know, you've got pop-up windows and some junky ads all over the place, and it's super annoying. Like I said, they did it to us. It drove me absolutely nuts because there was nothing we could do about it. And the bottom line is this problem is wildly out of control. And I've given you some examples here. These are all misspellings of YouTube. This one here, YouTube with a V, gets over 300,000 uniques a month. And that's because the V and the B are right next to each other on the keyboard. And so one of the things that some fraudulent affiliates will do is they will register misspelled versions of your own name. And they'll take that domain, point it back to your affiliate program, and essentially earn a commission for traffic that frankly should have been yours to begin with. So there's a couple of strategies here. If you're larger, if you're from a larger merchant, this is already happening to you, I promise you. There's dozens, if not hundreds, and I'll show you a tool in a second you can use to check that. If you're smaller, one of the things that you can do is what we call defensive registration, which is essentially registering your own typos before somebody else does, because it's considerably cheaper to buy them yourself than it is to try and get them back through a legal process later. I mean, orders of magnitude cheaper. Just real briefly, we're going to get super nerdy for a second. So a proxy is a piece of software that essentially acts in between a web browser and a web server to redirect traffic. And there are a couple different kinds of proxies, and they're super useful for investigating fraud, and I'm going to give you a couple examples of things you can use on your own. Both David's firm and mine also operate rather sophisticated proxy networks that we use for detecting fraud, but you can use, there are a couple different things that are available you can even use for free. One of them is called Tor, which is short for the onion router, and it essentially lets you route your traffic through a variety of computers on the internet, and it'll pop out somewhere else in the world. If you've ever seen these spy movies where somebody's bouncing their phone calls around satellites to try and avoid detection, and they usually have some fancy stuff on the screen, that's exactly what this is. Tor is kind of cool, but I have to say right up front, it can be super slow. It's not the fastest way to visit a website. But if you want to see what a website looks like from somewhere other than your location, you can certainly use Tor. To give you an example, we were talking with Blockbuster at one point, and I don't mean to call them out because this happens to everybody, so it's not Blockbuster's fault. But we happened to notice that BlockbusterOnline.com pointed to an online casino. Blockbuster Online spelled correctly, which is their brand. I mean, they're out there with that Blockbuster Online advertising campaign. And we said, well, how is it possible that BlockbusterOnline.com points to a casino and they don't know about it? So we brought it to their attention. They said, well, no, BlockbusterOnline.com points to our website. What are you talking about? And I said, no, it points to a casino. And we went back and forth, and it turns out that the people who were running BlockbusterOnline.com were sophisticated enough to know that Blockbuster is based in Texas. And so they were taking requests that were coming from Texas and pointing them straight back to Blockbuster's website so that Blockbuster wouldn't see it from their headquarters. Everybody else in the world was seeing the casino. So this is why you don't necessarily want to have, I mean, you would at least want to double check, right? If you're checking it from your location, but if you have any reason to be suspicious, you can use something like Tor to check it from somewhere else to see what everybody else sees, other than you. Another kind of proxy is something called a recording proxy, and what a recording proxy does is it records all the traffic that goes through it. And this is an application you can either run on your desktop, or you can, there are some web-based ones. I happen to like this one called Charles. Essentially what it does is you run it on your computer, you visit websites, and it records all the traffic goes back and forth between your web browser and the website, and then it lets you look at it. And what you can see is redirects. You can see if, to David's point earlier, you can see if they're calling in links from other sites that you weren't aware of that aren't necessarily visible on the page. I think there's a free trial. And it's $50, but as far as last I checked, it was about $50, and I think certainly well worth it. Here's a screenshot. I mean, it's nothing you're going to be able to see, but you can sort of get the gist here that it gives you lots and lots and lots of detail. One of the tools that I really like for combating this whole thing is a tiered commission structure, and I will go so far as to say that this is there's some controversy over whether this is a good idea or not. I like it. There are some other reasons you might not like it. But essentially, sometimes affiliates that are looking to stay under the radar will register multiple times under multiple different names and have checks going to different places, and they'll have domain names that appear to be under different ownership. And essentially, they're trying to scatter it around so that no one of those entities that they control or aliases are particularly visible. And what a tiered commission structure does is, if, as I pointed out in the graph here, if you're something like 0 to 5K pays 5%, 5 to 10K pays 6%, something like that, what you're essentially doing is you're encouraging people to try and hit higher numbers. And what that does for a fraudulent affiliate is it exploits what we were talking about earlier, one of their weaknesses, which is the greed factor. And so what we see quite frequently is with companies that have tiered commission structures, they will, the fraudulent affiliates will take these multiple entities that, various different domain names that appear to be owned by different aliases, maybe even different countries. They'll take all that traffic, point it through one affiliate ID so that they can try and get to the next tier. So you're essentially encouraging them to identify themselves. Does that make sense? So it's a clever trick for fraud prevention. As I mentioned, I make a point at the bottom that some merchants find the tiered commission structures start to get unnecessarily complicated. So it'd just be a question of whether it works for you. And then lastly, I think that these kind of issues I find are a lot easier for companies to deal with when they have thought the issue out ahead of time. So if you sat down with your team and figured out what kind of policies you're going to have when you find fraudulent affiliates, much, much, much easier to deal with it then than when you find it. So when you discover, down the line a ways that, call it, 10% of your revenue is coming from one fraudulent affiliate, you have a real dilemma on your hands, right? I mean, are you going to kick them out of your program and have your program go down by 10%? So if you knew in advance what you would do, or if you were vigilant about keeping that from happening to begin with, you could avoid that problem altogether. And one of the things that I think is trickiest, and I can't necessarily advise you on what the right answer is, but there are some affiliates we would consider to be gray hats. Those would be people that aren't necessarily totally evil. They are doing some legit stuff, but they may be juicing their program with, any number of these other techniques. What do you do about those guys? And so this is something that's, I think, worth sitting down and having a considered conversation to figure out how you stand on this stuff before it happens. There you go. So that's my time.
So we're going to move into more of a discussion-oriented conversation from here on out. It's going to be the four of us talking about stuff that we've seen, answering some questions, touching on some of this stuff. At any point, if you want to interject with a comment, a question, blurt something out, raise your hand or just ask it out loud. And I think hopefully it's a discussion that the four of us have and that you all can participate in as well. So I think I'll start off, and Jamie, you've worked with a lot of very big affiliate programs. You've seen some of the stuff that we walked through. To what extent does a lot of this matter? Or out of the things we've touched base, what would you emphasize first or most?
Well, I think it's probably the most important thing, and especially the bigger the brand. But you have a responsibility to your company, your brand, but also to the partners that you work with. I think the most it's a simple concept. Know your partners, but that's not necessarily easy, as these guys have pointed out. They're doing a lot of people are doing a lot of different things, but knowing your partners is the first step, and to know what they're doing. You don't have to know exactly what is going on, because the affiliates that are in the room will testify to that. They don't want to tell you exactly what's going on as to give away their competitive edge, but to know who they are, build relationships, and that's just a general good affiliate manager thing to be doing. To run a good program, you have to know who they are. One of you guys, while we were talking, said, would you pay an employee $10,000 a month and not call them, not be able to know who they are? One of the best ways to do that is to look to your left and your right. When we put we had you guys raise your hand, most of you are merchants. One of the best ways to do is to get to know each other and to call each other. Hey, do you know affiliate X? And you'll hear from a lot of these other people in the room with you that, yes, I've worked with this affiliate and they are okay. And that is probably, it's a referral. You get someone who's worked with a colleague of yours for years. You can trust what they're doing. But it isn't easy, knowing who they are. We with all our programs, and we manage big brands and small brands, the first front line is your affiliate applications. Going through that process. We don't have any that are on auto-approve. They're all manually approved, and we have a team that goes through it, and they check using some of these tools here, our database, and if there's anything questionable, then they go through a separate process to get identified. It can be difficult and time-consuming, but that's probably the first step. But knowing your affiliates is probably the most important thing, and then just get to know everyone in the room. We have a room of merchants, and you guys can help each other identify what's going on with these affiliates, what they're doing.
I think you're not going to find, it's going to be very rare that there's an affiliate who is very large in your program and is not in anyone else's program. Most affiliates work with multiple partners, and the successful ones will have built relationships, hopefully with you and with other people. And if they're not reaching out to you and their program's growing, it's useful to take a step back and make sure you understand where the traffic's coming back. I think technically one of the things that seems to almost always coincide with some form of abuse is when there's no referrer in your traffic. So most of the networks provide an ability to look and see where that person's traffic is coming from, where their affiliate's coming from. And generally speaking, if it's blank, it's undefined. Like, there are very legitimate reasons for that to happen, but they're also, more often than not, it ends up being things that aren't healthy for your program. And it's useful to understand where it's coming from. I know, Josh, you mentioned a few tools that you use to check out domain registration and ownership.
Yeah, there's a lot of good technology out there. Some of it's free, some of it's inexpensive. For domain research, domaintools.com, you can have a subscription there, and it's a user, somebody at somebody.com owns 40,000 other domains. Oh, well, that's interesting. He only lists 2 in his profile. So sometimes you can do a little bit of homework based on a domain name that may show up in a profile. A lot of the questionable affiliate accounts will have pretty spotty profiles. They'll look pretty plain Jane, or maybe it's a free site, doing a who is lookup, and it's registered to Mrs. John Smith, or something Mickey Mouse, or some red flag will fly up for you. As mentioned before, the relationship that you have with your affiliates is going to be key. And I should also mention that why affiliates themselves should also be concerned about fraud. Those of you that are doing legitimate marketing for good companies and you want to do the best, is that because of the pressures that advertisers face as a result of fraud, this can artificially cause lower commissions for the overall program. In other words, when the advertiser is taking into account the cost factors of fraud, this can also mean that good affiliates are paid less than they might otherwise be. I don't want any of the affiliates to believe that all advertisers are clean either. Because of these pressures, you may find that you have an advertiser that's canceling an abnormally large number of commissions that you've raised. More than likely, this is an advertiser who's under a lot of pressure due to fraud, and yours may have rightly or wrongly been reversed. So not that the advertiser necessarily intentionally wants to cheat its affiliates. That's not a good policy, and nobody would do that. But the financial pressures that advertisers and merchants are under may cause some reversals that shouldn't have been reversed. So just as the merchants or vendors hopefully have a good relationship with their affiliates as well as with their networks when patterns appear, the affiliates in the room and the decent, good, hardworking affiliates should also have good relations with their affiliate managers and with the network. So if there's anything unusual happening with your commissions as an affiliate, you need to find out from your merchant or from the network, why is this happening? So the patterns, the spotting of patterns is consistent whether you're from the advertiser side or the affiliate side. There is always the question of whether this fraud is being intentionally created by the actual affiliate or simply a result of really bad traffic. And if a pattern is to appear, for example, an abnormally high click-through rate or an abnormally high conversion rate, something doesn't seem right compared to the rest of your program, it certainly warrants investigation. If it's a decent affiliate who's using a bad traffic source, Dialog can fix that right away. Well, let's talk about where, were you buying from a small engine? Were you doing pop-up ads from an international company that, is not your target audience for the advertiser at all?
More Chinese visitors to you.
Right. Now, it's possible that once an affiliate is alerted that you've spotted a pattern that you're concerned about, if they're legitimate, of course, they're going to work with you, and there'll be a certain level of trust that's there. But realize that you're also tipping your hand a little bit as an advertiser, too, and all they could, if they're not a legitimate affiliate, they could instantaneously, in 2 minutes, dilute that traffic and bring that conversion number down. So it's a tricky business. There's probably some legitimate reasons why affiliates are a little afraid of telling you everything about their traffic. They don't want you to get fired and then the whole affiliate program goes away and all of a sudden everything that they did for you is being done in-house. That's happened, and so there's some legitimate fears for that. But I think, as was mentioned, having a good understanding of what your policies are and thinking about them. I mean, taking the time at least once a year, go over your program terms and conditions. What have I learned in the last year? Is there something I could make stronger? It's much easier to have a strong policy and choose to lightly enforce it than it is to have a weak policy and then get all upset because you can't enforce it. You didn't have that rule. So unless you're specific, affiliates will assume, oh, well, then they must allow brand bidding or they must allow typo squatting. If you're in a competitive industry vertical, you may have a clean program, you may have a strict policy that needs to be adhered to, but maybe your competitors do not. And so you need to also be aware of what's happening with your competition as well, because your competition, by allowing unethical practices by affiliates, may actually be contributing to some bad things in your whole industry vertical. For the most part, the affiliate networks really will want to work with you to make sure that your traffic is clean, that you have a relationship with your affiliates. But without any disrespect to any of the smaller networks, I have seen over the last 3 or 4 years that the larger, more established networks who've had more time to develop technology and fraud monitoring, when questionable affiliates are removed forcibly or get scared and leave the larger networks, I have found that they will tend to look for smaller networks to join that are less sophisticated, who might not care about some of the gray hat or black hat techniques. And so if you're looking at managing multiple programs and multiple networks, please do, be aware that some of the less desirable affiliates may congregate or cluster in smaller networks. Absolutely monitor your own brand online. There are hacker forums, there are black hat marketing websites. Join, type in your brand, see if they're talking about you. If you find that they're, because there's an ego involved, really big naughty guys are probably keeping it all a secret, but there's a lot of less sophisticated naughty affiliates that want to tell the world about how they just made $500 in 5 minutes and pulled one over on a big advertiser. When your brand appears in one of these spaces, your heart's going to sink to your stomach, and you're going to be like, uh-oh, here it goes. So having your pulse on...
Any examples? Any sites that you especially recommend to look for that?
There are probably a half a dozen or more, Black Hat World, Syndicate.
Syndicate's one that we've seen a lot of, particularly dedicated abusers come from. Discussions about techniques to hide themselves and which merchants have figured out, have outed their program or have outed their operations.
I mean, if you're an information product seller, I don't know if there's any of those types of merchants in here, that's a very frequent place. The Black Hat forums are a very frequent place to find out that you're what you thought was a secure download page after the purchase. Nope. And as soon as that information is released, the value of that product diminishes.
So in that case, it's better maybe to just pick, to individually pick and recruit affiliates in Allo rather than just making it open to applications.
Yeah, when you first start a new program, it's a big dilemma of how strict to make your approval process. You can open it up and get a large number of affiliates very quickly, some of which who only join for one reason, and that's to get a discount on their own purchase. Fine. But then you also risk opening the door to maybe some of the less desirable type affiliates. On the other hand, if you're too strict and you say, okay, I'm only going to let you in if you're a 4-bar performer or a super affiliate, then you risk not growing your program fast enough.
I mean, I go as far as to say that the moment that you open a new program on either it's for a new merchant or it's on a new network, most merchants aren't yet sophisticated about screening for abuse in that application process. And we find that a lot of abuse happens to new merchants right away. Like I think a good friend of mine launched an eco-friendly jewelry store, and I had been telling her, oh, you need to go get in on an affiliate program. And the moment she did that, I think a few of her domains got squatted. It was easily misspelled, and it was literally it went live on ShareSale on Monday. On Tuesday, there were 4 different registrations on easy misspellings for the domain. And so there's a very clear, in my opinion, is that there's a very clear operation whereby people look for new merchants, new programs, and target them first. And it may be not a very sophisticated target, but you want to screen those applications carefully and make sure you know who you're talking to in your earliest days.
We actually, all of our programs, we manually approve, and what we do is go through the list first. All the identifiable ones that we know, we'll go through and review, and then we'll go as quickly as we can through the rest. We've launched a few programs that have been private in nature and then brought them out. You just, like Josh said and David, you got to expect that if you're looking to hit numbers on month 1 and 2, that's going to be difficult unless you've been doing it for a long time and have a stable of affiliates that have known that this is coming. And in that regard, you probably want to let them know where you're at before you launch the program. So do a little preview of that it's coming, and so that that process is being done prior to launching the program. But we are very liberal in the letting the applications come in. I'm a firm believer in processes, so I don't know how many of you have written down what you approve and what you don't approve on a document of these are the things you look for. We started it out as sort of just a training purpose for our employees, and it was more of a negative document. This is what you don't look for. If you see this, those are much easier to identify than what you are looking for, because the problem, if you close it and just do an invite only, I've been doing this for 10 years, all of us have been doing this a long time, and there are still people we've never met before, never heard of, that come into a program with legitimate traffic that do incredibly well, that we've just never bumped into yet. And so you don't want to limit yourself and not have those. But that's the front line of this battle. Are those, who's in the program? If they're not in the program, they can't siphon money from you.
I'd like to also mention that the commission structures that you offer also can have a role to play in how much fraud you attract. The temptation with new programs is to be the highest payout. I've got 5 competitors, 20 competitors, 30 competitors, whatever. I want to launch, I want to attract some attention. I'm going to offer super aggressive commissions. Red flag. That guy is going to make a beeline for top payouts. In fact, you may even find rankings within these black hat communities of, well, if you're going to cheat, this is the order to do it in, because these are the payouts that are being offered. You have to you have to be comfortable with your level of exposure and your level of risk, but realize that probably some of the largest brands I'm not sure if the affiliates have seen this or not, but I think in a lot of industry verticals, some of the very largest brands are really not necessarily the highest payout, partly because they have the brand equity, but also because they would attract a huge amount of fraud. A lot of times, yeah, go ahead.
Question, if you're looking at a specific affiliate, what is an acceptable fraud rate and what isn't an acceptable fraud rate? And what happens if you have an affiliate that drives a lot of your sales for you and they have some fraudulent orders? How do you deal with those fraudulent orders but still keep that affiliate happy?
So when you say fraud rate, you're referring to the transactions that that affiliate drives are fraudulent.
Well,
we all look at Josh.
there's no set rule. You should have an overview from your whole company about what is the average number of transactions that normally get reversed or that go bad or that turn out to be fraud. Certainly, that's not a number that companies make public, but because that would just be tipping the hand for those that are working the formula. But if the reversal rate or the bad rate is higher than normal, this would be an indicator. If it's an affiliate that you think is intentionally creating this fraud versus a great affiliate who has lots of traffic, because they have a lot of traffic, they're going to have a little bit more bad sales go bad, totally different scenario. You know, don't really believe in spanking unless it's deserved, but you have to sort of put it in perspective with the other kinds of fraud or transactional problems that may be occurring in your specific company.
To touch on that though, if you have a good, going back to what you said earlier, if you have a good relationship with your affiliate, and you do have to spank them,
and they didn't ask for it.
Traffic,
That's
right?
a good
or
qualifier.
Yeah.
They should, based off the relationship, should understand that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you're working with these guys. You know, you're working with these guys, and you should. I mean, this, you know, how many affiliates do we pay? A lot of money, and it is a partnership. You guys are constantly tweaking what's going on, and so if there's a legitimate affiliate that has a lot of fraud, you guys are talking already. It's in their best interest to figure out why that is. It's in your best interest to help them figure out why that is. And then if something pops up, if someone pops up with a higher conversion rate or a higher fraud rate, you should have those parameters. What is your acceptable conversion rate? If someone comes in at a 40% conversion rate and your average is 8, then you know, one, I want to talk to them, because how can we drive more traffic is that first question. The second is, you know, will they respond? If they don't, you know, the affiliates in the room, you may not want to respond to emails, and you may get a lot, but I will say if you don't respond, there's an assumption made.
Something's wrong.
Something's going up. But, you know, with the question on what's acceptable, honestly, it is all over the board depending on the merchant. Retail is definitely different than lead gen. Lead gen, you should have processes clearly defined on how you check, what's acceptable, and how you reverse.
Yeah, we talked about the commission level, but also the type of payout. I mean, my experience is that pay-per-sale is less risky than pay-per-lead. Mm-hmm. Pay-per-lead is less risky for fraud than pay-per-click. You may have one or more of those, and those, you know, how you're paying out and what you're paying out may have an equal impact on what kinds of fraud that you attract.
We have you were first, I think.
What if you contact the affiliate and you ask them, you know, let's say 5% of the orders coming through are fraudulent, and you talk to them and they say, well, I don't know why. I have no idea why this traffic is coming through. We work with a product that already has a relatively high fraudulent rate. So what can you suggest to them, sort of tools can you offer them to figure out why their traffic is bad?
Sub-IDs help.
Yeah, yeah.
You add an extra tracking parameter on your traffic sources as an affiliate, that will help you understand where the best traffic that you're sending is coming from.
And both of your data, I mean, you both have to have good referring data, know what that customer is doing after. you know, 5% fraud rate overall, in my experience, is not that bad, but it may be high for what you do. But it's all that stats, all that data, how that person got there, what they do afterwards to try and figure that out. As far as tools, a lot of it is just, it's how much data you have and how you can slice and dice it. You know, if you can get it all in an Excel spreadsheet and that's all you have, there's a lot you can do with that to try and figure it out.
And you may also want to watch when that transaction goes bad. If it's right after you paid out, that could be a problem. You know, if it's going bad before the payout, the normal payout system's going to catch it. It's not anything that you can assume is being done on purpose. It's going to come out in the wash. But if you notice that a large percent of your reversals or bad sales happen right after your payout, then there might be you might have a problem.
And you want to look at time, you know, leads coming in, leads and orders coming in. If there's coming from the same affiliate, the same IP, within 3 minutes, you can look and see there's something there. That'll help you at least identify whether it's fraud. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think Lance, and then
Taking your
go
job.
ahead. Sorry. No worries.
I was curious about, I guess, possibly, you know, implementing honeypots to catch out the brand of black hats, or if that's anything that you guys are currently doing.
A lot of that's done on transactional fraud, not so much on the, because obviously if there's a bad credit card, do you really want that person to know that you know it's a bad credit card? Or do you want to accumulate additional evidence? I mean, you still have the right to reverse a sale that, you know, if it's within a certain amount of time. But from a transactional standpoint, I think a lot of merchants are starting to utilize honeypots or, make that person think that everything's good, that transaction went through, that the credit card's going to be charged, and so that you don't tip your hand or help that bad guy understand what your red flags are. So yeah, I think for those of you who know what honeypotting is, it's kind of an old school hacker technology for intercepting data and making the party think that something has happened when it hasn't really yet happened. So yeah, that is a good way to do it.
Let's go over there and then we'll go back there.
Jamie, you mentioned that you have developed processes on allowing affiliates into your program. Can you give maybe a couple steps that you go through in order to approve them?
Yeah, we look at the information they have in the application. The main thing we then go to is our database. I highly recommend having something. If you're Goldmine, Salesforce, FileMaker, Excel, something to keep track of who you work with and your relationship over time. So we use some of the tools that Graham talked about on the Who Is right off the bat. We see if we've ever worked with them before. Since we manage right now 10 programs, we can get a really good look over, you know, what this person is doing in CJ and Google and LinkShare and ShareASale and some other networks. And so we can, are they in, the first question is, do we know them? Do we have a relationship with them? If we do, then is it good or bad? If it's good, then a lot of times, you know, if they're appropriate for the program, we'll let them in. Then we look at, does the who is information match what they put in the account? Do they have any other domains that we need to worry about? And using some of those tools to find out what else they're involved with. We'll do just a quick Google search, and we'll search for their company name, their URL, and their domain. A lot of this stuff, like I said, it's not hard or complex. It does take some time, but this is your first line of defense. And then we just have a list of things that we don't want in the program, and that changes by individual program. And the way we create that document is, you know, the program's announced, and then myself or another senior manager will go through the first. We'll take the document we have from a similar program and go through the first 100 and say, okay, in this program we don't want incentivized, we don't want, you know, this, and then you have the obvious stuff. You know, 6 p.m. We're not going to have, you know, this type of site.
Let's be clear on the obvious stuff.
Adult sites, we don't let into most of our, well, actually all of our programs. We don't do anything, but that's right off the bat. Known trademark bidders, we don't let out. You know, the trademark bidding is, and we work with David on one of our accounts. The first step, how we manage paid search is different than we did 5-10 years ago, in that it's closed in general to everybody. And we only work with people that we do know. And then new paid search affiliates, we have to get to know on an individual basis. So we really look to see who we know. Are they in our database? Have we ever worked with them before, ever experienced? If we don't know and they start driving some traffic, we'll reach out to our network of other managers that we know. Have you guys ever worked with them? They're driving traffic. They respond. Trust your gut. If they don't respond and they're driving traffic, we make the assumption that we need to talk to them. If we never hear from them via, we use the phone a lot, but a lot of our good affiliates are overseas, and it's difficult to arrange that time. A lot of them do speak a different language. English is a second language for them, and they prefer not to talk on the phone, and that's okay. But we use every type of communication except for a smoke signal to get to them. And sometimes, if we can't show with some of these guys' tools, our past relationship, any of the other tools that we use, that they're not doing anything bad, we'll trust but continue to try and verify what's going on. And we'll send them a snail mail. Just a regular mail, not email, postal mail. Yeah. Snail mail.
Put a stamp on it.
Yeah, we actually buy a stamp. I did that the other day. It was the first time in probably 6 years I bought stamps. They were like 48 cents. But we'll send them letters. We'll try to catch them on IM. If they're frequent a forum that we can identify, we'll do that. We use Skype, Uvu, everything. So we try to find them that way. And then we'll ask our colleagues if they have any feedback on it.
Sometimes you're going to have to get tough. If you have no response, for example, you've identified somebody that's a problem, you're pretty sure that there is something really wrong with this particular affiliate, and you notice that they're also promoting 4 other companies. Go to the affiliate program managers of those 4 other companies and say, this guy is highly suspicious, this guy is doing something dirty, and you will find that some of those other companies are going to take just as much concern as you will. Now, they may be your competitors, but they'll appreciate the fact, most of them, that you've taken the effort to identify somebody and warn them about it. Now you're not just messing with their revenue stream from you, you're messing with their revenue stream from multiple vendors. That's a sure way to get their attention.
How often is a large merchant check with?
It depends on your volume. If you've got a high level of volume and a high level of activity in your program, it's probably something that should at least be done monthly.
With lead gen, we check daily.
Yeah, with lead gen, you do more frequently.
So this may be a pretty basic question, but it took a long time for me to even come to this, because on Twitter, everybody who's affiliate marketing seems to be nothing I want to have nothing to do with. So the question that I have is, if you see people who are saying affiliate marketing are those people that you should report as spam right away, or are there legitimate people who are in affiliate marketing and doing these sorts of Twitter?
Like Twittering and social media? They're very legitimate people.
Well, the way that they just have their name, affiliate, their affiliate marketing, and then they just do the @replies and list different people.
Well, sometimes you get into like a follow Friday, and they'll just say, these are people you should follow.
Right.
And so sometimes that's legit. But I think,
if all you get is automated marketing messages that are not personal, that may not be somebody that you'd want to necessarily follow, because they're just putting you in a software and bombarding you.
And trust your gut, too.
Is that spam, and are you already alerted to their business practices, and should you report them as such?
It may just be bad Twittering.
Yeah, I think it's just bad Twittering.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Tweeting.
Bad tweets.
Let's go to the gentleman back there.
Come back on your dialogue about the honeypotting a while ago. My experience has been black and white. It's not gray. I've got great, some great affiliates, but then the ones that are bad are really bad. When you accumulate this data that we're talking about, and you've got X number of bad orders, they're fraudulent, they're, real credit cards, being used. What do you do with that data? Because I personally believe that this industry, as this young lady here said, is that, it's a great industry, but it's got a terrible bad name. I'm an agency, numerous clients, and, I can see the golden pot at the end of the rainbow, don't get me wrong. But it's these bad guys that are giving the good guys a terrible name among the merchants. So I personally, maybe I'm being too strong about this, but I think this particular group here should litigate against these bad guys and get them out of the business. Not to say that everybody is great. I'm talking about black here, totally, or they're bad guys, totally bad.
And that's where these guys, when they talked about terms and conditions. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. At several other companies I worked for, we did litigate. But that's the first thing. If you don't have if you don't know what you should be talking about malware in your agreement, what you should be talking about typo squatting, then when that happens,
you don't have any legal.
You don't have anything to do.
Just to add to this, though, it's really what I'm running into is Mary Smith and Omaha's credit cards being used, and it's legitimate. Everything is right about the order, with the exception of email address. They're obviously bogus email addresses because they don't want Mary to get the email saying, "Hey, thank you for your order." So it's not any of the things you've mentioned, although I'm sure I'll run into that at some point in time. But it's just completely.
Well, you should obviously report any suspicious behavior activities to the networks, first of all. Cancel and reverse any commissions that are absolutely against your terms and conditions. Make sure that your terms and conditions are very strict and strong in the way that you want them to be. And in a worst case scenario, if it's a mafioso ring or something, go to the federal government, go to the Federal Trade Commission, your state's attorney.
FTC is your friend.
And get them involved as well.
One quick moment. We're bumping up against our time. I think we can lunch just follow, so I'm content to sit up here and talk as long as these guys are. So I think we'll keep going. As people trickle out, please fill out surveys.
Yeah,
and
please.
If you want copies of presentations, drop off a card, and we'll make sure to get them to you afterwards. But sorry, so you had a question there.
I'm just going to actually, just maybe to culminate this to the end. Has anybody ever actually been imprisoned over this?
Yes.
Yeah.
What were they?
Not any of us.
Yeah, no, there's a...
Well, if not, I don't know.
Not for that.
I can check the ankle bracelet.
So there's a guy named John Zuccarini who was imprisoned for typo squatting.
That just happened, right?
No, it was a
There
while.
was one that just happened as well.
Yeah. So if you're gonna be a typo squatter, I would say stick with legit sites. If you take a kid site and redirect it to porn, you're looking at jail time for that.
Yeah.
And so people have gone to jail for that.
Do you need to create a contract terms and conditions if you're going through a network?
Most networks give you the option to use custom terms and conditions, and if it's available to you and it's not outside, if they don't charge a lot for you to do that, do it. Absolutely do it.
So we'll put all these together and.
Look to some of the big brands.
Yeah,
they've
join their
invested a
programs.
lot of money in protecting themselves. So join some of the big brand programs. Now you have a template that you can take to your own counsel and say, okay, and you may have to read this thing 50 times from, in a row, because we don't all speak legalese, to really identify which parts are most relevant to our own programs. But
you can check out some that I've worked on. Coldwater Creek, Hilton Hotels, very clearly defined. And what I would say beyond writing it in the legalese, have a site, have a part of your site that's in plain text that says, we always do, for all our clients, we have a special provisions area of the affiliate education area, we call. And on that special provision, it clearly defines in my language, don't do this with paid search. You're not allowed to do these things. And so, and continually remind people of that, because to the gentleman's question in the back, can you litigate? If you have it in the contract, you should. If it's not a good partner that you don't know and they are clearly just trying to scam sales and commissions from you, that is definitely an option.
This will be a document for all of them if you're in a network.
And even if you have
apply to any
That joins your program,
Yeah.
right. I mean,
Yeah,
you can
your
have
program.
special terms and conditions for special affiliates, but you need to have one that's broad for all affiliates.
I think the point that Jamie just made, though, like your terms aren't the document that you use to communicate your rules to your affiliates. It's really important that you get those correct, but you need to be communicating your rules consistently. Like it's not just like there's a site, it's in mailings. Like they need to know, through plain English what it is that you don't.
Gardeners.com does a real good job. Every affiliate email has those laid out at the bottom of the email, every single one. And that'd be a Gardner Supply Company. That'd be a good one. Gardeners, Gardene, yeah. I always miss that second or the first E. I think you've been patiently waiting.
I just have a question about, we have in our terms and conditions that there's no trademark bidding and no direct linking allowed. I have a big problem with that. I have to read all the time, especially with geo-targeting. And I'm just wondering, is there some sort of like unwritten rule about how many chances you give them, you contact them? It is hard to get in touch with them. It's hard for them to read your information.
What we've seen, we know this one well. There's a couple of different scenarios. In this scenario where they might plausibly be broad matching into the program, most people will send a nice note and say, "Hey, we found this. Please include our brand terms in your negative blacklist." If they're geo-targeting you, they should be kicked out immediately. Like they're basically going through efforts to hide their activity from you.
They do everything.
And no, exactly, yeah. And as it turns out, they're like most of the folks that we see doing this, that's their business. Like they're. Like you may ask them to stop, and they may still have sales. They've just, and most likely, not always, they've just found another way, somewhere where you haven't been monitoring to do it.
But then my hesitation, if it's not right away, I've had a couple, not most of them, but a couple of them be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I'll correct it right away. It'll go down." Then my fear is they'll do it. They're doing it then.
Well, you need to monitor it, but I give a few chances. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, by all means.
I don't need to point something like that. I just meant I got this
Yeah. But we look at it, and it depends on it comes down to knowing who they are. There's only been one paid search partner that we worked for a long time that I found was doing a lot of bad stuff. And that was actually with the help of BrandVerity. We found that they weren't just geo-targeting where the client was. They were geo-targeting both of my offices at the time. They knew I traveled to New York, Vegas, and San Francisco. And they would target those out. And until one I found, there were two. One I found when I traveled to somewhere different and I just checked for no real reason, and the other was through the tool. But it depends on the partner. The ads are displayed not based on just the price. So there are other, there's a content network, there's, just the conversion rate and like terms. So it's not always 100% cut and dry. So with some partners, we do give a little leeway, but what you need to see from them is immediate response, acknowledgement of what was going on, a reason, like, okay, what happened? Let's try and figure out what happened. And then, it rectified relatively immediately. And their willingness to work. And I trust your gut. If you think they're not doing something right. And that goes back, you mentioned, like, you find someone who's doing something, there's 10% of your sales are coming through them. You do need to make a tough decision. Are we going to lose that 10% of the sales? We were talking earlier, and it depends on what they're doing, but a lot of times that's either will come through another affiliate, your email or your search channel or another channel, and those sales will still come through, and the other partners will raise the tide as well. So
Especially in my case, if they're using my trademark terms.
Exactly, yeah. In that case, you're fine.
And I'll give one quick plug. One of the features that we make available through our service is for some people that opt in to an aspect of it, they can see past behavior of affiliates. So have they been found on behalf of our other clients that are monitoring? And invariably, if you're finding them geo-targeting against you, like they'll have a long history of geo-targeting against many other brands.
We work with some affiliates on trademarks with certain clients that at the end of a certain time frame, the budget's out for the corporate account, and we call them. And it all comes down to basic things. What core things you should be doing with your affiliate program. It's communication.
In the event that you're looking out for fraud and you're seeing one affiliate who most of their traffic is alright, but you're seeing like one or two particular sub-IDs just is really poor quality. Is there like a way to either search on Google or something to like find, you know, like where that link is actually coming from, like to search within the source code or something like that?
You could search for, what I do sometimes is the name of the client. So, you know, Dropio and the sub-ID. I mean, you guys probably have some more sophisticated ways to do that, but just Google.
Right. So in some cases, you'll be able to take just the sub-ID and just do a search on that string, and it may pull up the pages that it's hosted on. If it's particularly sketchy traffic, they're probably blocking bots and it's not going to appear, but I've seen it work in some scenarios.
And so, related to that, are there vendors the same way there is to find click fraud? Like I heard you guys mentioning BrandVerity, but are there other vendors for identifying like affiliate fraud or software-based something like that?
It's growing. The number of companies, agencies, software tools that are out there to help advertisers mitigate their risk is growing. Only in the last maybe 3 years, but in the last year, there's a number of companies and vendors and software tools that can help you. So yeah, it shouldn't be too tough to. Well, you know, we have to be a little bit careful in plugging third parties as panelists. So.
Well, if one of those companies is trying to do that, I'll talk to you afterwards. But
there you go. They're here.
That guy right there.
To share with the group here that, and to what this lady had asked earlier, though, as a guy that used to sue affiliate networks and also chase bad guys around the world, if you are a network or a merchant and you do not kill off your affiliate that you know is doing fraudulent traffic over a period of time, then any company that may be negatively harmed, be it through spam or some other methodology, okay? MySpace was a perfect example of who I used to work for. The liability, we would shift it all the way up the chain. The affiliate was the one spamming, the affiliate network was the one allowing it, the merchant was the one who was allowing the affiliate to allow the network. And the truth is, if you looked at the data streams on a lot of these, it was true. And we won a lot of money with regards to it in terms of pointing it out. So there's that balancing act. Now that I'm doing the other side, I'm trying to help out affiliate networks in this regard. There's that balancing act that if you do find somebody who does something bad, or you feel they're doing it bad, at least make sure you keep track of it and have notification that you did get in contact with them, that you did try to notify them, that you did try to clean it all up, so that you can shift that away from you a little bit and actually point it back to the person who's actually doing the bad stuff. So just a warning on that aspect of it.
Someone here's had his arm up a little bit.
Hi. So I'm sorry if I missed this. I arrived late and I was trying to. Cookie stuffing for large companies. And let's not talk about like basic cookie stuffing. Let's talk about advanced cookie stuffing, supporting their traffic. They're actually working out which people are stuffed, they're only getting them once, they're doing it through the correct result. Like, what tools do you have in place to catch good quality cookies?
So the best tools I've seen so far have Ben Edelman has some monitoring tools that he uses. I think the first line of defense is your referrer data, right? So you've got to know where the traffic's coming from. I've seen a few, I know of at least one company that has written their own crawler that goes and visits every referrer and watch what happens based on its visit. With that being said, the sophisticated guys aren't going to be fooled that way. Yeah, not for long. Like they're going to be checking the referrer for the traffic to the referrer page, and if it's not from the right spot, they're not going to stuff the cookie.
I mean, the cookies show up as a click, right? So I mean, if you're getting an insane amount of clicks from anyone, you need to dig into that. Maybe.
My point is, you've got a lot of big affiliates. They're giving you an insane amount of clicks, right? How do you figure out back end cookie stuffing when they are putting the referrers trace through a rerouter for their Google traffic and their they're not doing the obvious stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a whole, there's no one way. I mean, it's, we mentioned over and over the communication, the dialogue, the relationship, checking with the program managers at the networks. Have they ever been caught doing this before? Have they been, you know, are they naughty? Do they have a 5-star ranking? Are they well respected? You know, there has to be a series of red flags that are raised before, because honestly, it takes just as much time for an affiliate to walk the bleeding edge of black hat as it does to develop and establish good, positive relationships with vendors. So it takes them time, it takes them effort, and if anybody's sniffing around the wrong way, I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere where I'm less obvious.
Just turning over stones may make them scatter.
If you don't ask the questions, you'll never out them, I guess.
So there's actually would be interested in having a conversation a bit after this. I think to some extent you need to be operating a crawler that is visiting pages, and then I think, not to some extent, I think effectively to catch the most sophisticated cookie stuffers that needs to be happening. I think at that point it becomes a very interesting game of trying to figure out where the cookie stuffing would happen from, and so the technique that step one is you take all the terms that drive traffic to your site through paid or organic, and you run the crawler against searches across those terms, and then you visit all those pages that they come from, and you're effectively looking for evidence of that cookie stuff happening, right? So I mean, if you've got the crawler, it's likely it's you're actually running an actual browser and you're detecting that specific activity. But you effectively need to go very broad, unfortunately.
If you're used to looking at code and you can, look through a lot of times it's JavaScript code that's calling this up. I think most sophisticated quote-unquote cheaters are beyond the iframe method of cookie stuffing now. And so a lot of times you can look at the JavaScript code that exists on a page and analyze it. What is this script doing on this page? What is it attempting to do? Firefox has some, HTTP live headers type plugins that you can sometimes identify certain elements of the page as they load what they're trying to do. But not everybody's always comfortable looking at source code and trying to ferret out a piece of malicious JavaScript. So depends on your own level of sophistication.
Yeah, actually, would love to connect after the show, and I'm curious what you've done so far and what you found that have worked. And
Ben Edelin.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we do too. I mean, that's probably one person that's really good to work with.
Okay.